Hello and welcome to the section Introduction to PowerShell Core 6. In this section, we're going to cover what you can expect from this course. We're going to look at the differences between Windows PowerShell and PowerShell Core 6, and we're going to set up our tools, PowerShell Core 6 and Visual Studio Code. This video is differences between Windows PowerShell and PowerShell Core 6. In this video, I'm going to go over the key differences between Windows PowerShell and PowerShell Core 6. Windows PowerShell, every version of PowerShell up to version 5.1. It comes already installed on the Windows operating systems, or at least there is some version of Windows PowerShell that's either installed or able to be turned on as an optional feature in all recent versions of Windows desktop and server operating systems. Windows PowerShell is built on the .NET framework, and because it's built on the .NET framework, Windows PowerShell only runs on systems that have the .NET framework installed. Now, up until very recently, this meant that PowerShell could only be installed on the Windows OS, since the full version of the .NET framework only runs on Windows. PowerShell Core 6, on the other hand, is not built on the full version of the .NET framework. Instead, it's built on an updated implementation of the .NET framework called .NET Core. .NET Core is an open source project. It doesn't contain every feature of the full .NET framework, but it does have the core features, it has the same classes and the same object. There's some performance advantages of .NET Core. It's got a smaller code base, it's a more sleek framework, it performs better on web servers. But the biggest difference, at least the difference that most directly affects PowerShell, is that .NET Core can be installed on anything. Mac OS, Linux, and Windows, they're all able to run .NET Core. So we can also run PowerShell Core on those operating systems. The other major change to PowerShell is the shift to an open source project. The main language features, things like how the pipeline works, the comparison operators, and things like that, they're all still maintained by the PowerShell team. But the actual code itself that goes into making PowerShell, it's all available on GitHub, and everyone's able to read, learn, and make suggestions, and even help with the coding. And to add some context, I'm going to give you a brief recap of the major milestones in PowerShell development. Version 1 gave us the basic language, some core features and concepts. The most revolutionary of these is the pipeline, which is still the main differentiator between PowerShell and other languages. It's true that Linux has used the pipe to pass text from one command to another. PowerShell does one step beyond that, and it passes full .NET objects from one command to the next. It passes them through the pipeline so that the output of one command becomes the input for the next command. Many of what we still use in PowerShell through all of the versions was right here in version 1, but there was still a long way to go. Version 1 did have a way to extend its functionality called PS Snap-in. Though I never really tried to create one, I did use them. The Quest Active Roles PowerShell Snap-in for Active Directory management really changed my career. If there were technical details that made PowerShell Snap-ins operate differently than what we now use PowerShell modules, those aren't really apparent to us. So the idea of extending PowerShell was there from the beginning, but it got a lot better with modules. What modules did for us, it gave us a very simple way to turn a set of PowerShell scripts into your toolbox. And it could be created completely with PowerShell. So if you didn't know C#, you're still just a few baby steps away from writing a module. The other huge game changer in PowerShell version 2 was remoting. The tools were there so that you could run commands on your own machine or start a PowerShell session on a remote machine, even executing commands on multiple machines at the same time. Version 3 expanded more into modules, and by now, most of the Microsoft products were becoming PowerShell aware. That is, the software teams that were responsible, say, for Exchange, they were starting to use PowerShell as a management platform for their software. Far more commands were available both right out of the box and by extending through modules. We also got a major language improvement in the form of workflows. Workflows brought us higher levels of resiliency and parallelism than what we had before. PowerShell version 4 changed everything again with the inclusion of desired state configuration, or DSC. DSC is a declarative model of programming, which is enormously powerful. By using DSC, you write your code to describe what the end result looks like, instead of describing every step of the way to get you there. DSC gets a lot of great attention, and I'm sure that a lot of you are looking for answers to questions you have about desired state configuration. We will cover it later in this course. PowerShell version 5 continued to further refine what was already working, and it made improvements in all areas, including security, debugging, remoting. Now, this is a long and steady progress with Windows PowerShell, and it leaves us ready to make the next huge jump. With PowerShell Core 6, the Windows in the product name is gone. Windows PowerShell is the version that's built on .NET Framework, the full version, and it runs only on Windows. PowerShell Core, which starts at version 6, is built on .NET Core. It runs anywhere and it can be used to manage anything in the way that PowerShell is being developed. It also adds a little bit of confusion as there's two products now, Windows PowerShell and PowerShell Core. But don't think of PowerShell Core as a lesser product. I don't want people to get the wrong idea. But don't think of PowerShell Core as a lesser product. I don't want people to get the wrong idea that PowerShell Core is only part of what you can do with PowerShell and it's only the part that's cross-platform with Linux. Going forward, we're only expecting one product to continue getting updates, PowerShell Core. Windows PowerShell is still there on all the existing Windows operating systems, and it's not being completely abandoned, but as PowerShell Core continues to provide regular updates and improvements, there'll be plenty of motivation to get off those old versions of Windows PowerShell and take advantage of the updates that are available in the new versions. So, as you can tell, this is an exciting time learning the latest version of PowerShell. For 10 years, PowerShell has been improving the way we manage Microsoft products, and with PowerShell Core, we're going to see administrators, even in other ecosystems, being able to take some of the best things from PowerShell and use them to improve their processes. In the next video, I'm going to step you through the installing PowerShell Core version 6, and we're going to add in first-class editor as well. We're going to be installing Visual Studio Code. Thanks for watching.